Hi, and welcome to our second mindfulness practices and the brain part of our series that we're offering this year at the MAISD on a monthly basis. My name is Stacy Hopkins-Schrumpf. I am a behavioral consultant in special education, and I have been at the ISD for 10 years now and have been lucky enough to be able to train mindfulness and support our special educators in our county. And now my colleague, Kelly, is going to introduce herself.
Hi again, my name is Kelly Hookinga. I am a first-year MAISD employee, and I worked 23 years in the school settings before that as a special ed teacher, a gen ed teacher, and a counselor for 12 years. And I love mindfulness, and they let me join them, so I feel pretty privileged.
And Kelly and I actually worked together many moons ago for Fruitport Community School. So it's great to be back together again, doing not our counselor social worker thing, but our mindfulness thing with all of you today. So like I said, this is our second module or video in this series. The first one we did, if you were able to watch it, was around the breath. And what we like to say about this series is you can watch it in any order. It doesn't matter where you start or where you go. These are available as long as you register through Learning Stream, which I'm assuming you did. And if you didn't and you just randomly found this video, you can get sketches if you register through Learning Stream. We should be together for about 30 to 45 minutes today. So those sketches will be recorded once you complete the Google form that's in that Google Drive. If you have any problems accessing that, you can contact Kelly or I, and we can help you out with that. So without further ado, we're going to continue. One of the things we like to remind everyone of is, especially if this is your first time experiencing mindfulness practices, that it's not a one-fits-all concept. This is something that if you experience something today that makes you feel really good, then, ooh, that's something that I might want to continue with. But just remember that sometimes when we experience new things, we experience certain levels of comfort, maybe discomfort, and that's okay. That's all part of that learning process. And one of the things we always like to say is mindfulness is kind of what you make of it, whether you commit yourself to a daily practice or a weekly practice, or maybe it's just experiencing this 30 to 45 minutes a month. Starting out, just keeping in mind that mindfulness is a practice. So like with most things, the more you practice, the more you get comfortable, and the more you get better over time. So just make sure that you keep that in mind, whether this is your first experience with a mindfulness practice, or if you've been doing it for, a really long time, you're still going to experience those kind of ebb and flows of different levels of comfort. So the more you practice, the more you'll actually like it and feel better about those practices. So when we look at this picture, every time I look at this, I think I see something different. The picture on the left, it's like the mind is full, right? And we're talking about the brain today. So many of us have so many things going on in our heads that we can't see the sun through the trees, right? Like in that second picture, and really notice more of the simple things around us. And it's not just negative things or stressful things that cloud our minds and our brains. It's the fun, exciting, busyness of life kinds of things that also get us going. I know during COVID, I felt like I wasn't being useful as a mom, right? Because everything slowed down, all the activities ended. Even in my job, being able to go into school buildings, like that kind of ended for me. And now that all of those things have picked back up and we're overloaded in all these activities and I can get back into all these school buildings again, those are really positive things, but it still can be overwhelming at times. So really considering, am I able to really see the sun through those trees? Am I really able to notice kind of the things that are going on like right in front of me, or do I have all of these things going on in my head? So one of the things we like to do to help with that is what we call an I'm in. It really is giving yourself permission to acknowledge all of these things that might be going on in your head right now, that might be keeping you from being present right now for this 30 to 45 minutes. And it doesn't mean acknowledging it makes it all go away. It just allows you to kind of let that go for now and really be able to be in that present moment and focus on what we're doing right now. And you can apply this to any other areas of your life too. So I'm going to model for you what I mean by an I'm in, and whether you're alone, somebody might hear you talking to yourself. I get caught doing that all the time. Or whether you're in a small group of people, you can do like a whip around and do this I'm in, so everybody kind of understands the space that everybody else is in right now. And it's meant to be like 30 seconds. I mean, we could probably tell lots of stories, but this really is meant to be a quick acknowledgement of all those things to be able to focus on the here and now. So mine right now at this moment is that it's a really busy time of year at work, and my partner and I that do the same job are getting a lot of requests for support out in the districts, and just really thinking about how I'm going to fit all those things into my calendar. And then the weekend is super full of kids' activities, and I'm just wondering how I'm going to be in two places at once. But with that being said, I really want to be here with you and experience this with you. So I am in. So just take a moment and do your own I'm in. So pause, and then when you're ready, you can unpause the video. So hopefully that allowed you to be able to be here and be in the present. And just so you know, you can use that in staff meetings. It's a great way for people, especially at the end of the day, to kind of let everything go so you can really focus in on what it is you're trying to do as a group. And it also lets everybody know kind of where everybody else is emotionally in that moment, to kind of guide what you could maybe even accomplish for that meeting or even during class that day. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, and she is going to talk to you about how some of the stresses that we are under do impact us, and our stress levels and our neurological functioning.
Okay. This picture should represent somebody carrying a lot of baggage. And for me, a big part of mindfulness is knowing what I'm carrying with me into any situation, whether that be my job or home. And typically, we all have some kind of emotional baggage that we carry with us throughout our life. And often that baggage carries some emotionally charged thoughts. And usually that's about the past. And often it's about what we might face in the future. Now, experts say that is directly correlated to how we react to the events and people throughout any given day. So knowing that this baggage we carry into our days is going to correlate with how we react to events and people, being mindful of that is a powerful tool. You're going to know what may kind of take you off course. Practicing mindfulness allows us to recognize that emotional baggage that we're carrying, and it allows us to really focus on what's happening in the present instead of allowing thoughts and emotions about the past or future get in the way of what's happening today. All right, so this is probably my favorite part of mindfulness, and I know that sounds a little weird, but it's because it gave me the why. And when I always would wonder why I felt the way I did, but it gave me the why and it made it concrete. So understanding the role that our brain plays in relation to our thoughts, emotions, and behavior is absolutely key to mindfulness. There are three areas of our brain that in particular are major players with regards to our reactions or our responses to any event. The first one being our prefrontal cortex. Now, what I say to kids at school is it's my smart part, because our prefrontal cortex is responsible for many great things. If you think about executive functioning, learning new information, which of course we want our kids to be in their PFC at school because they do that all day, and solving problems, making decisions, all of those things on that list happens through our prefrontal cortex or our PFC. Another part of the brain that really helps with it is our hippocampus. And our hippocampus is our memories. It has to do with encoding, and it encodes and consolidates memory, short and long term. It regulates learning, and it assists us with our spatial navigation. The third part of our brain that has a huge amount to do with what happens when we are not in control of our emotions is our amygdala. And the amygdala is very much responsible for scanning the environment for like threats, something that we might have to protect ourselves from. The problem is that many times it's a perceived danger versus a real danger. And what I mean by that is we get upset by something that isn't actually dangerous, like a bear in the woods. That's dangerous, but we would get upset by some sort of event or something that has happened. Let's say that your kids are whining at home in the evening and you get upset, you kind of lose control a little. Well, that comes from your amygdala, because it actually turns off your PFC and gets you into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And it just alarms your brain that, things aren't right and you need to do in the fight, flight, or freeze. There's also another reaction that's just been added. It's called fawn. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But that is called an emotional or amygdala hijacking. When your amygdala turns on, because of that, your PFC turns off and you react out of threat-based mindsets. All right, so when we look at the next screen, you'll see that an amygdala hijacking or a threat-based reaction may look something like these. So I want to say that you don't typically hear somebody say, amygdala hijacking or threat-based reactions. You'll hear them say, I had a meltdown, or I flipped my lid, or, something like I just lost control. That is amygdala hijacking. All right, so anyway, when you look at this threat-based mindset, you'll see that fight might look something like, you're wrong, I'm right. It's when you're going to just stand up for yourself, and you may not really need to do so in such an emotional way. Flight, of course, is let's talk about something else, or it could be that you just get up and leave, or you shut down. Freeze is just really kind of just detaching yourself from the environment. Now that can look like shutting down as well, but freezing, I would see in the classroom, is if you called on a kid and they didn't know the answer, you can see it, that freeze, like a deer in the headlights. And that literally is their PFC shutting down, their amygdala signaling that they're in danger. And again, that's a perceived danger, but we need to know when that's happening so that we can control it. Now, fawn is just a surface level engagement. Maybe somebody's feelings have been hurt, and you'll see them kind of sit back and they'll just like, they stop the conversation, but they're still there, just not really there. And I do believe we see that often when kids are bullied by other kids, yet they still hang around with them. That might be a fawn situation. So the good news is that just like muscles, our emotional control or self-regulation can be strengthened, and it all starts with identifying the stressors or stimuli that trigger these reactions in us. And again, we're all different. And once you've identified those triggers, you have the ability to recognize them and, in essence, hit the pause button to diffuse your emotional reaction before it occurs. I like to think of the power of the pause is what you hear. I like to think of the pause as something like defensive driving, yet it's kind of navigating through your day at workplace and at home and in the community. In a way, it's like tapping the brake. And it's a very, very effective mindfulness technique, because if you know what you're going into, whether your body signals it or you're feeling your heart race or you're feeling just that fight, flight, or freeze feeling, if you know you're going into it, if you pause, you simply pause or tap the brakes before you react, things usually end up better. So thinking about that, triggers, I'd like you to ask yourself 3 questions. As we discussed, learning these triggers is one of the key components of mindfulness and living your life in a calmer, more peaceful state of being. But think about these questions. What triggers your amygdala responses? Think of those things that get you upset or irrational. What triggers your amygdala responses? Now, if you have something in mind, I'd like you to think about what does your reaction look like? In other words, what does your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn look like for you? Do you go to different types, or do you typically use one more than the others? And again, that would depend on what you're experiencing, I'm sure, but what does that look like in you? And lastly, once you've got that, you're thinking about what triggers you, how you react to it, fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. Now think about how it impacts you. What happens when you've reacted that way? What is the consequence of that? So remembering that all people are wired, remembering that all people are wired differently, it's important to know that experiencing anger, fear, excitement, love, or hate, disgust, or frustration, all of those things can trigger an emotional hijack and a potential emotional hijacking. And even those positives, it's really positive experiences sometimes can trigger that. I'm going to just liken it to a kid who's so excited about a field trip that they're just a little bit above and beyond what they can handle themselves or control themselves. And the 3 tips that you can try when you find yourself in the middle of an emotional hijacking are these. Number 1, take a deep breath. Before saying a word or shooting a mean look, immediately take a breath to start that calming process. Remember, that deep breath is going to be able to keep you from going straight to your amygdala, because you're going to have the PFC power when you have that oxygen and you've taken that breath. The next thing you can do is change the setting. So if it's at all possible, get up, move around, and do anything possible to change your environment. And this serves a few purposes. By changing your environment, it makes your brain reactivate some pathways that it had to shut down when your amygdala triggered. It secondly gives you time to calm down and think rationally before you react or respond. And the third tip is that to purposefully think about the positives. Now, I know that sounds a little wacky when you're upset, right? But if you're in a particular situation that you are upset, you're very upset, it helps to think about maybe the flip side of that situation, if there is one, if there is a positive. If not, think about the positive things that you have besides that. Because if you're thinking about positives, you're thinking, which means you're using your prefrontal cortex, your PFC, that it has not shut down, or it is opening back up. That will keep you in a calmer state of mind, and probably the results or the consequences will be much more positive than if you hadn't done one or all of these 3 things. All right. This is a graphic that represents the power of the pause. And remember, like hitting the brakes or tapping on the brakes. Hitting pause or being mindful of how a given stimulus is affecting you before reacting will allow you to have those thoughtful responses instead of impulsive reactions that often make matters worse. Now, Stacy, I think you're next.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, so we are going to talk about the power of that pause, like Kelly said, and the breath. The breath is something we always have with us. It's something that we can always go to. Some of us like our fidgets, and we like those other things that we can do, like those apps on our phone. We like to chat with our friends and vent and things like that. But the power of the breath is so important in terms of the practice of mindfulness. It really is one of the foundations. So if you haven't watched the first video that we did, we talked a lot about the breath and the purpose behind the breath. But in this case, it really is to slow things down, like Kelly said, to interrupt that amygdala hijacking, to really be able to access, your prefrontal cortex for that new learning. And what I mean by learning, it isn't just academics, right? It's just learning how to be in a social situation. It's learning how to be, sometimes just learning how to be, so we really want to focus on the breath. And for those of you, if this is something new, I can share with you the first time I did something like this, it didn't feel very comfortable. It didn't feel bad. I wanted it to be like this magic wand and I would automatically feel better. But remember, mindfulness practices are just that. They are practices. So if this is your first experience and you struggle a little bit with it, what I did is I just tried it on my own and kept doing it. And I find the breath is one of the things that works the best for me. I do not participate in a lot of meditation. That's too long for me, although it works really, really well over time as a mindfulness practice, if that's something you want to work your way up to. And that might even be a goal for me to set for myself too, to see if I could dabble in some meditation as well. But so right now, if you haven't ever participated in this before, or even if you have, just a reminder, get comfortable. Make sure you're in your mindful body. Your mindful body is really where your feet are on the floor and your kind of hands are resting kind of on your legs. And you sit up straight, whether that's back against your chair or on the edge of your chair, just to allow for that oxygen flow to go freely through your body. So we typically ask people to close their eyes. If you don't feel safe, if you're in an environment where you don't feel safe doing that, just focus on something on the ceiling or on the floor or on the wall. We tell our students to do that same thing. If you have any sort of trauma in your background, closing your eyes might not be a safe feeling for you, and that's completely okay. So I'm actually going to turn my video off and lead you through a 4-7-8 breathing exercise. So go ahead and you can turn off your lights if you'd like, and just get in your mindful bodies and be able to close your eyes and just notice your breath. Just as you inhale, just a regular inhale and exhale, how does your breath feel as it maybe is going in through your nose and down your throat? Your exhale out of your mouth. And just notice how that feels. If it helps, sometimes you can put your hand on your chest to see how that feels, or even on your belly to notice how that breath feels. And really just focus on your breath. If you find your mind wandering to those other thought bubbles we all have above our heads, just kind of let that thought bubble float up and up and up into the sky and float away, and return to your breath. What we're going to try now is called 4-7-8 breathing, and that involves you breathing in for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 7, and exhaling for 8. And on that exhale, it's not meant to be quiet. You really almost like you're blowing on a mirror to get that fog. It's that kind of sound that you might hear in the room if you're with other people, or even if you're by yourself. So I'm going to cue you. And if you think 7 seconds is way too long to hold your breath, that's fine. Just do what feels comfortable for you. Just make sure that exhale is nice and slow. I will count for you the first time and let you experience it on your own for a couple of breaths. Counting usually helps me not get too distracted. So I try to count inside my head. So let's take a nice, slow, deep breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nice, slow exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Go ahead and try this on your own. If you feel like you need to have a couple just regular breaths in between, that's fine too. Notice how your body feels when you do this. Where do you notice any tension in your body? Maybe you notice it more on the inhale, and then how does that tension feel in your body on that exhale? Again, if your mind starts to wander, just bring yourself back to the breath and the counting. As you finish up with your last 4, 7, 8 breath, I'd really like for you on an inhale to think to yourself, I am enough. And just really breathe that in. I really want you to say that to yourself. I am enough. As you return to your regular breath, I want you to tell yourself thank you. You really say thank you to yourself for taking the time to take care of yourself today. Start maybe wiggling your fingers and your toes to bring yourself back into the room. Okay. Now this is going to be awkward for me because I cannot figure out where I am. I was going to say, I can't get my video back. Where did it go? I was so much into the mindfulness, my video just completely disappeared. And now I had a panic moment. All right. So again, just if that was the first time you've experienced something like that, it may have felt a little weird, and that's okay. Just think to yourself, why did that feel weird for me? Or man, that felt really good. Like, when might I need to do that again? And I think with the breath, you have to keep in mind that don't just go to that breath when you're either overly excited or under a lot of stress. It's great to practice that breathing when you are at baseline and when you are calm, because then when you're in those moments of stress, like Kelly talked about, that power of the pause comes easier. It really is training your brain to respond differently to those stressors, so that when you go to your breath, that has a calming feeling for you. You know what that does for you. And there's all different kinds of breaths. If you're like, that one was okay for me, just Google mindful breathing and you'll come up with a gazillion different ways to practice breathing. There are breathing practices to bring you up when you're feeling kind of down. And then there are breathing practices that you can use to relax you. And that 4-7-8 breathing is really one that helps relax you, even maybe do it before you go to sleep. So hopefully you're not sleeping right now. And Kelly's going to talk about how this might look in a classroom, what this might look like if you were working with students in terms of the neuroscience behind mindfulness.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Stacy. But I want to say that it's so funny because I was watching a breathing video, because I do that often. I'll look on, like you said, to look that up, and it's just there's so much information out there, and it's enlightening. But there was a video of a little girl talking about, she's a preschooler, and she's talking about how her teacher taught her. It's actually in your Google folder. There's a link to that. But she's talking about how her teacher teaches her to take a breath so she can calm down and she can think better. And anyway, she said one day her teacher was just getting so upset. Her voice got louder and louder. And she says, I don't know what the teacher's name was, like, Mrs. Anderson, you have got to take a breath. And so, I mean, I think that it's amazing how much you learn earlier, how it is built in. I think that's awesome. So when we talk about teaching kids about the brain, I know that sounds very difficult, but I'm telling you right now, they accept it and just use the information like you'd never believe. So in my experience with the younger students, maybe K2 and preschool, would be that, using something of a comparison context. So you'll see here on the screen, we have the owl, the guard dog, and the elephant. And the theory is the owl is your PFC, the guard dog would be your amygdala, and the memory would be the elephant, your hippocampus. But there are many comparisons that have different animals as well. So you could choose any of those, but the kids really get it when they think about the job of that animal. And I put in the Google folder, there's a reference to the owl and the guard dog, and that is a Zindan video link. She's phenomenal. In fact, I watch her videos sometimes just to be mindful myself, because she's phenomenal. And I know the kids like it as well. So that is in your resource folder. We also did like a headband, and it said brain power on the front. And then we had the owl, the guard dog, and the elephant on the side with the brain. And I just wanted to see how much they retained. They actually put the animals in the correct areas. So that was pretty exciting that it stuck. And kids still talk to me about it today, and now they're in middle school. So, all right. And the next screen, I wanted to share with you, I am not getting any type of sales commission on this, I promise, but I wanted to tell you about with grades K through secondary, there is a Mind Up curriculum. It's pretty inexpensive. It's somewhere between $18 and $24. You can get it on Amazon or the Scholastic link, which I've also included in your Module 2 resource folder. But there's like 15 lessons they give you, and I'm just going to name a few, like how your brain works, mindful awareness, choosing optimism, expressing gratitude, many, many more that has to do with mindfulness. And it comes with a very big poster that's your brain poster for that age level, with front and back information. Is pretty fun. But you can also get this poster for free. There are links in the resource folder where it just gives you the PDF, and you can have that printed as well. So I found it has been very good for all of the age levels, and you can kind of tweak those lessons. And out of the last 5 years, I just took the beginning parts of it and it really just built onto each lesson. And it's great foundational pieces for kids to learn about, and they will use it. So I hope you find that helpful.
All right. So we are going to end today with heartfulness, and you'll probably see us end with heartfulness in most of these videos. Heartfulness is just a way of just staying connected to yourself, staying connected to other people, to the world, to the larger earth. And you can use this in many different ways. In classrooms, we've seen this done for maybe students who are on an extended absence, or who are even sick for the day, or a staff member who might be out for the day or an extended period of time, just to send feelings of heartfulness out to them. So today, and you can do this many different ways, but today we're going to actually send heartfulness to ourselves. I think sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, is show gratitude and love to ourselves, because we tend to, especially as educators, use all of our caring and love with our students. And we also need to bring that back to us as well, to be able to share that with others. So you're just going to repeat after me. I like to put sometimes my hands over my heart. Sometimes I put my hands out like I'm sharing this with other people. But today I'm going to put my hands over my heart, and you're going to repeat after me. I wish for me to be happy. I wish for me to be healthy. I wish for me to be peaceful. I wish for me to have joy in my life. And really take a nice deep breath and just really breathe that in. Just sit with that for a minute. See how that made you feel. Okay, Kelly, if you want to share your video again so we can give them a send off. We really, really appreciate you taking this 30 to 45 minutes, whatever it ends up being, with us today, and just knowing that we will continue to make these videos. Like I said, this is the second one. I don't know what order you're watching these in. The third one is going to be with our partners, Lisa and Stephanie, sharing about the language of the body through the practice of a body scan, just really recognizing in your body where you may be feeling stress, and really talking about how to take care of yourself physically through the utilization of the practice of the body scan. So we really want to say thank you for being with us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Kelly or I. And Kelly, is there anything you'd like to say
I'm
before
happy to
we
be
sign
here.
off?
Yeah. If you have any questions about those lessons, I can do everything I can to help. And I would be happier our community kids got that. It'd make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.